The pod breached Earth's atmosphere at 5 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, trailing fire and desperation across the pre-dawn sky. Inside, Lyss of Varith Prime pressed her crystalline hands against the restraints and tried to remember the meditation sequences that were supposed to calm a Vatarian mind. They weren't working. The pod's AI had already informed her of the landing coordinates, a coastal region in the Pacific Northwest, far from major population centers. Remote enough that her inevitable failure would be witnessed by few. The Council's mercy, such as it was, meant she wouldn't endanger many humans when she finally broke, because she would break. Everyone knew that. Her mother had said as much during the severance ceremony, her voice carrying across the hall of ordered thought with perfect clarity. You will learn what becomes of those who question logic. You will understand that emotional attachments lead only to chaos and dissolution. Lyss had stood there in her ceremonial robes, stripped of her family crest, stripped of her status as heir to the high magistrate's seat, and watched her mother's face remain perfectly composed. No grief, no anger, just the cold satisfaction of a problem being solved through proper channels. The impact came softer than expected. Water absorbed much of the collision force. Lyss hung in the restraints, disoriented, as seawater began to seep through the cracked seals. She had perhaps 10 minutes before the pod filled completely. She triggered the emergency release and pushed against the hatch. She tumbled into cold Pacific water. The shock of it drove every meditation sequence from her mind. She swam with desperate efficiency, her elongated limbs cutting through the water. The shore was close, perhaps 100 meters. Her feet found rocky bottom. She staggered forward, water streaming from her exile clothes, and collapsed on the beach as dawn painted the sky in colors that had no name in Vatarian mathematics. This was Earth. This was her punishment. This was where she would learn that her mother was right, that questioning the severance protocol was dangerous thinking, that suggesting emotional bonds might have value was the kind of corruption that led to species-wide decline. She didn't know that 200 meters up the shoreline, Dr. Roland Pacheco was checking his tidal monitoring equipment and had just noticed something very wrong with his readings. Something large and hot had entered the water 15 minutes ago. Roland was 43 years old, weathered by salt air and grief in equal measure. He'd been a marine biologist for 20 years, studying tidal patterns with the kind of devotion that came from needing something to fill the spaces where a person used to be. His wife Diane had died 5 years ago, and the work kept him going. He saw the figure on the beach before he saw the pod. His first thought was that someone needed help. His second thought, as his headlamp illuminated crystalline skin patterns and limbs that moved with unusual grace, was considerably less coherent. Roland stopped 10 feet away. The alien was conscious but not moving, female probably based on body structure, breathing. The crystalline patterns on her skin were barely visible, like lights turned down to their dimmest setting. "Hey," he said, then felt stupid. "But what else did you say?" The alien's eyes opened. They were large, positioned slightly further apart than human eyes, with pupils that looked like fractured quartz. They fixed on Roland with an expression he recognized despite the alien features, terror. "I'm not going to hurt you," Roland said, raising his hand slowly. "You're injured, you need help." The alien's mouth moved. For a moment nothing came out but a sound like wind chimes. Then words came, translated with a slight mechanical overlay. "You should not approach. I am exiled. I am dangerous." Roland had been married to an emergency room nurse for 15 years. Learned that the first rule was always the same: keep people alive first, ask questions later. "You don't look dangerous," he said. "You look hurt. I'm calling my sister. She's a nurse." "That is illogical. I provide no benefit to you or your sister." "Yeah, well, we're not really a benefit analysis kind of family." Roland pulled out his phone and hit speed dial. Gemma Tolliver answered on the second ring. "This better be good. I found someone on the beach. She's hurt, and she's not human." There was a pause. "Roland, did you hit your head?" "I'm serious. There's a pod in the water and an alien on the beach, and she looks like she's in shock. Can you come?" Another pause, then, "I'm 10 minutes out, keep her talking. And Roland, if this is some kind of prank, I'm going to kill you." Roland turned back to the alien. "My sister's coming. What's your name?" "Lyss." formerly of the House of Velies, 4th magnitude, heir designate to the High Magistrates' Council. Now simply Lyss, exile, and cautionary tale. I'm Roland, just Roland, marine biologist. Can you tell me what hurts? My left arm is fractured. I have lacerations from the pod breach. I'm experiencing hypothermia by my species standards. She paused. Why are you helping me? Because you need help. That is not an answer. It is a tautology. Roland found himself almost smiling. How about this? Because leaving someone hurt on a beach feels wrong. Wrong is a moral categorization. Morality is inefficient and leads to poor outcomes. Is that what your people believe? It is what my people know. Lyss's patterns flickered slightly brighter, then dimmed. It is what I am here to learn through application. Exposure to an emotionally driven species like yours will demonstrate the chaos that results from abandoning logic. Roland processed that. So you're here as some kind of object lesson. I am here as punishment. I questioned the severance protocol. I suggested that emotional attachments between parent and offspring might serve evolutionary purposes. This was considered dangerous thinking, so they sent me to Earth, where such thinking is the norm, so I could observe the resulting dysfunction. Huh. Roland looked at the ocean, now painted orange and gold by the rising sun. I hate to break it to you, but we're actually doing okay. Gemma arrived in her truck, taking one look at Lyss before turning to Roland. Okay, so you weren't kidding. I never kid about aliens. Gemma was already moving, pulling a trauma kit from her truck. Hi there, I'm Gemma. I'm a nurse. I'm going to check you over, okay? Over the next 20 minutes, Gemma worked with calm efficiency, stabilizing Lyss's fractured arm and cleaning her wounds. Roland made the necessary calls. The Coast Guard was confused but responsive. The Office of Extraterrestrial Relations number connected him to Ambassador Fairhill, who became instantly alert at the mention of a Vatarian exile. We got notification they were sending someone, Fairhill said. I didn't think they'd actually do it. The severance protocol is basically state-sanctioned punishment. Keep her somewhere safe and private. I'll be there in 2 hours. Between Roland and Gemma, they got Lyss to Roland's truck. She was tall, maybe 6.5 feet, and weighed surprisingly little. She could walk, though she moved with a grace that seemed slightly off to human eyes. Haven House sat on a bluff overlooking the ocean, weathered cedar siding and large windows. Roland had bought it with Diane 18 years ago. The house still felt too big sometimes, but right now, it felt exactly right. They settled Lyss in the guest bedroom. Gemma checked her injuries again while Roland made coffee. Through the window, he could see the pod still half submerged in the shallows, already attracting curious beachcombers. When Ambassador Fairhill arrived at 7:30 a.m., he entered with the careful observation of a trained diplomat. He spoke with Lyss briefly, confirming her legal status under the severance protocol. She had the right to remain on Earth for 3 years. After that, she could petition to return or face permanent exile. Dr. Pacheco has offered to let you stay here temporarily, Fairhill said. I'd like to extend that offer for as long as you need. Lyss looked between them, clearly struggling to find the logical flaw. Why would you do this? Roland spoke before he could think better of it. Because you're hurt and far from home, that's enough. That is emotional reasoning. Yeah, we're human, we do that. After Fairhill left, Roland made lunch. Simple pasta, which Lyss's integration chip confirmed was compatible with Vatarian digestion. She ate mechanically, clearly viewing food as fuel rather than pleasure. You don't have to stay in the guest room, Roland said. When you're feeling better, you can use the whole house. There's a deck overlooking the ocean. This is your dwelling. I should not impose. It's a big house for one person. Honestly, you'd be doing me a favor. It's too quiet sometimes. Lyss studied him. You have experienced loss. Your dwelling contains evidence of a bonded partner, but no partner is present. My wife died 5 years ago, cancer, and you grieve still. This is the emotional attachment problem. If you had not bonded, you would not suffer the loss. If I hadn't bonded, I wouldn't have had 15 years of the best parts of my life. Roland met her eyes. The grief is worth it. She was worth it. Lyss didn't respond. But something in her patterns shifted. A flicker that might have been confusion or the beginning of understanding. The first weeks passed in careful routine. Lyss remained mostly in the guest room, venturing out for meals and brief walks. Roland gave her space, going about his work analyzing data and preparing for the fall semester's teaching load. But he was aware of her constant presence in ways that surprised him. The town noticed his guest quickly. Cascadia Station was small, maybe 3,000 people, and word spread fast. But the response wasn't what Lyss expected. No fear, no hostility, just curiosity mixed with casual helpfulness. Desmond Haruki showed up on day 10. He was 52, built like someone who'd spent their life working with their hands. He ran the local garage and considered himself the unofficial welcome committee. "Heard we've got a new resident," Des said when Roland answered the door. "Figured I'd stop by, see if she needs anything." Lyss had been on the deck. She rose with fluid grace. "I have no technology requiring repair." "Well, that's good, but if you do, I'm your guy." Des had an easy manner. "You settling in okay? I'm being housed adequately." That's the most formal way I've ever heard someone say they have a place to sleep. Des grinned and handed her a piece of paper. "That's my number. You need anything, you call me." After he left, Lyss studied the paper. "He receives no compensation for this offer." "Nope. This is a pattern among your people, offering aid without expectation of return." "It's called community," Roland said. "People help each other." Over the following weeks, Cascadia Station came to Lyss. Rita from the Copper Kettle brought food and declared Lyss too thin. Gemma stopped by regularly with her teenage son Jace, who was full of questions about alien technology and whether vegetarians played video games. When Jace convinced Lyss to try a strategy game, she approached it like a complex mathematical problem. But when she successfully balanced the city's budget and Jace cheered, her patterns brightened noticeably. "She's adapting," Gemma told Roland quietly, "faster than I'd expect." Is that good or bad? For her health, good. For whatever lesson her people wanted her to learn, probably not what they had in mind. By week 7, Lyss had begun venturing into town. She walked rather than accepting Roland's offer to drive, enjoying the coastal streets that curved illogically but beautifully. The Copper Kettle became a regular stop. Rita took one look at her and started adding extra portions to every meal. "You need to eat more," Rita said. "I don't care what planet you're from." Lyss discovered that pie was mathematically unnecessary and somehow wonderful anyway. She documented human behavior with scientific precision, partly for her reports, partly because it helped her make sense of what she was seeing. Humans touched each other constantly. They asked questions about each other's lives and seemed genuinely interested in the answers. They helped each other with tasks that provided no personal benefit. They laughed at things that weren't funny by any logical standard. One afternoon, Jace called to her from the park. "Hey, Lyss, you want to play soccer? We need another person for teams." She should refuse. This was recreational activity with no functional purpose. But Jace's expression was so openly hopeful that saying no felt wrong. She played. She was terrible, her movements somehow both graceful and awkward at the same time. She accidentally kicked the ball into the wrong goal twice. But when she finally made a successful pass to Jace and he scored, the entire group cheered, and her patterns brightened so much that several teenagers gasped. "That's so cool," one of them said. "Do they always do that?" "They indicate wellness," Lyss explained. "Brightness correlates with positive physical and psychological states. So you're happy, that's awesome. You should come play more often." That night she added to her report to the council. Day 51, participated in human recreational activity. Activity serves no functional purpose and carries risk of injury. However, participants demonstrated clear positive emotional responses. "When I successfully completed a game objective, experienced unexpected physiological response." Analysis. Human social bonding through shared activities creates reinforcing feedback loops, unable to identify predicted negative outcomes. She didn't mention that she'd agreed to play again next week. By week 10, Lyss had developed a routine. Mornings, she walked the beach, analyzing tidal patterns with Roland. He'd started showing her his research, explaining the complex interplay of lunar cycles and ocean currents. She understood the mathematics instantly but found the chaos of actual water somehow compelling. Afternoons were for the town. She'd stop by Des's garage where he taught her basic mechanics. "You've got good instincts," he told her. "You see the systems." On Verith Prime, I studied theoretical mathematics. This is applied mathematics. It is satisfying. She continued playing soccer with Jace and his friends, never becoming good but becoming enthusiastic. Rita hired her part-time at the Copper Kettle. Lyss learned to waitress with focused determination, terrible at small talk but excellent at remembering orders. "You're good with people," Rita told her. "I am not. I'm awkward and overly formal. You're present, you listen, you care if people are happy. That's being good with people." Evenings were at Haven House with Roland. They'd fallen into a pattern of shared dinners, talking about his research, about Vatarian mathematics, about the differences between their worlds. "My mother transmitted a message today," Lyss said one evening as they cleaned up. "She wanted an update on my rehabilitation." "What did you tell her?" "That I am observing human emotional dysfunction as instructed, that the chaos of Earth's social structures is evident." Roland was quiet for a moment. "Is that what you're seeing?" "It is what I am supposed to see." "That's not what I asked." Lyss set down her dish. "I do not know what I am seeing. Your people form attachments that cause pain. You expend resources on individuals who provide no functional return. By every Vatarian measure, your society should collapse under the weight of its own inefficiency." "But it doesn't." "No, it does not, and I cannot explain why." She turned to face him. "Roland, why do you help me? The truth." He considered while putting away the last dishes. "Because when Diane died, I almost didn't survive it. Emotionally, mentally, I was drowning. And Gemma refused to let me drown alone. She came over every day. She made me eat. She forced me to keep living even when I didn't want to. And slowly I came back." He looked out at the darkening ocean. "I help you because someone helped me. Because I know what it's like to be alone in a place that doesn't make sense. And because you're not just an exile or a lesson. You're a person who's far from home and trying to survive. That's enough." Lyss's patterns brightened and dimmed rapidly, a response she couldn't control. "On my world, that would be considered dangerous thinking." "Yeah, well, your world sent you here to learn. Maybe they sent you to the right place after all." Week 15 brought the first real challenge. Lyss was at the general store when 3 strangers entered. They weren't locals and they carried themselves with aggressive confidence. They saw her immediately. "Hey, look," one said loud enough for everyone to hear. "It's one of them, alien tourists slumming it with the humans." Lyss had been trained in diplomatic protocols. "I am simply purchasing supplies, excuse me." She tried to move past. One blocked her path. "What's wrong? Too good to talk to regular humans." "I think nothing of the sort. Please allow me to pass." "What are you even doing here? Don't you have your own planet?" The store had gone quiet. Lyss felt her patterns dimming, stress activating. She was taller but lighter and her arm had only recently healed. She was not equipped for confrontation. "I said, what are you?" "She's shopping." Dez's voice cut through the tension. He'd entered from the back. "Same as you. Now either make your purchases or leave." "This isn't your business, old man." "Everything in my town is my business, and I'm asking you nicely. Once." Dez positioned himself between Lyss and the strangers. He wasn't particularly large, but there was something in his stance that suggested capability. The strangers assessed the situation. The store owner had come out. Several locals had gathered. Cascadia Station was small, but it was clear where their loyalties lay. "Whatever, this town's too boring anyway." They left. Lyss was shaking, her patterns dim and flickering. "I apologize for causing disruption." "You didn't cause anything. Those idiots caused it." Dez put a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You okay?" "I am unharmed." "That's not what I asked." She looked at him, at the genuine concern, at the other townspeople offering quiet support. "I do not understand. Why did you intervene? The confrontation did not involve you." "Yeah, it did. You're part of this community. Someone messes with you, they mess with all of us. That's how it works." The store owner nodded. "You're one of us now. Don't matter where you're from." Lyss's patterns flickered with something other than stress. The integration chip provided a word, belonging. "Thank you," she said quietly. When she returned to Haven House, Roland took one look at her and said, "What happened?" She told him. As she spoke, she watched his expression shift from concern to anger to something protective. "Are you okay, really okay?" Dez intervened. "The community supported his intervention. I was not harmed." She paused. "But I was frightened. I did not understand why they were aggressive. I provided no provocation." "You didn't need to. Some people are afraid of things that are different." He was quiet. You know what else is human, what Des and the others did, standing up for you, making it clear you belong here. I do not belong here, I am an exile serving a punishment term. Lyss, you've been here almost 4 months. You play soccer with teenagers. You help Des at his garage. Rita saves you pie. Half the town knows your name. At what point does temporary exile become member of the community? Her patterns flickered rapidly. I cannot stay. In less than 3 years, I must return to Verith Prime or remain in permanent exile. Those are the only options. And if you don't want to go back, that is not, I am not. She stopped, her thoughts tangling. Roland, I am supposed to be learning that emotional attachments lead to dysfunction. But I have been here 15 weeks and I have seen only the opposite. I have seen community, support, kindness for no reason, and I do not know what to do with that information. Roland smiled, sad and understanding. Welcome to being human. We never know what to do with our emotions either. We just feel them and figure it out as we go. That night, for the first time, Lyss couldn't write her report to the council. She sat at the desk and couldn't find words to explain what she was experiencing. How could she quantify belonging? How could she mathematically express the safety she'd felt when Des stood between her and aggression? She finally typed, Day 107, observation continues, data collection ongoing, will provide comprehensive report at end of quarter. It was a delaying tactic, but she needed time to think, to process, to understand what was happening to her. At week 24, Ambassador Fairhill made his quarterly visit. He seemed pleased with what he found. You're doing well, he said over coffee. Better than most exiles. Usually we see depression, isolation, difficulty adapting. I have had assistance, Dr. Pacheco and his family, the community. That's good to hear. I've been fielding inquiries from the Vegetarian Council. They seem concerned that you're not reporting regularly. Lyss's patterns dimmed slightly. I provide the required quarterly reports, but not the weekly updates you were doing initially. They're worried you're becoming too acclimated. Fairhill's expression was careful. Lyss, I need to be straight with you. The severance protocol isn't really about rehabilitation. It's about demonstration. They sent you here expecting you to fail, to suffer, to come crawling back. Your success is complicating their narrative. My success? You're thriving, you've integrated, you have friends, a community, a life. That's not supposed to happen. He leaned forward. Some council members are pushing for early termination of your exile. Meaning they want to bring you back now. Cut the experiment short before you prove that emotional attachment doesn't lead to dysfunction. Roland had been listening. Can they do that? Force her back early? Technically, yes, but it would require a formal hearing and evidence that she's completed her rehabilitation. Fairhill looked at Lyss. Have you? Lyss understood the real question. Had she learned to reject emotional attachment? Would she tell the council what they wanted to hear? No, she said. I have not learned what they wanted me to learn. I have learned entirely different lessons. Then we might have a fight on our hands, because if they push for early termination and you refuse, we're looking at a diplomatic incident. After Fairhill left, Roland found Lyss on the deck, staring at the ocean with intensity. We'll figure something out, he said. If they try to take you back, we'll fight it. Roland, you cannot fight the Vegetarian Council. Earth cannot risk conflict over one exile. Maybe not. But Cascadia Station can risk a lot for one friend. He sat beside her. You've been here 6 months. That's long enough for us to care about what happens to you. What I want is irrelevant. I am property of the Vegetarian state. You're a person, and people get to choose their own paths. Not on my world. Then maybe that's the problem with your world. Roland was quiet. Lyss, if you could choose with no consequences, would you want to go back? She turned to him, her fractured quartz eyes reflecting the setting sun. Her patterns flickered rapidly. No, she whispered. I would not choose to return, but that choice is not mine to make. We'll see about that. Week 28 brought the official communication. Investigator Shale would arrive in 1 month to assess her rehabilitation and determine if early termination was appropriate. Lyss read it 3 times, her patterns dimming. They are coming. Determine I have learned the lessons of the severance protocol, they will take me home. And if you haven't, Gemma had come over immediately, then I will be subjected to isolation therapy, psychological reconditioning to remove the corruption I have absorbed here. Lyss's voice was flat. It is standard procedure. That sounds like torture. It is effective. Most subjects emerge with proper thinking restored. Lyss, that's brainwashing. Des, who'd arrived shortly after Gemma, looked at Roland. So what do? We fight. Roland was already pulling up documents. Fairhill said they can't take her if she has permanent legal ties to Earth, citizenship, property ownership, or family bonds. The room went quiet. Then Gemma said slowly, Roland, what are you thinking? Adoption. If I filed paperwork to adopt Lyss's family, they couldn't forcibly remove her without violating the accords. That's crazy. Is it? She's been living here for 7 months. She's part of our lives. Lyss, your family already, this would just make it legal. Lyss's patterns flickered rapidly. Roland, you cannot do this, the diplomatic repercussions. I don't care about diplomatic repercussions, I care about you. These past 7 months you've become part of my life, part of our lives. You're not just a guest or an exile, you're you. And I'm not going to let them take you back to be reprogrammed. You do not understand. On my world, I am the daughter of the High Magistrate. If I refuse to return, if I allow myself to be claimed by a human family, it will be the ultimate disgrace. Your mother sent you here hoping you'd fail. Gemma's voice was gentle but firm. They wanted you to suffer, to break, to come home begging to conform. Well, you didn't, you thrived, and now they're panicking. I am one individual, I prove nothing. You prove that their way isn't the only way, that emotional attachments don't lead to dysfunction. Des leaned forward. Lyss, I know we don't let family get taken against their will, but I am not your family. Yeah, you are. Roland's voice was quiet but certain. Maybe not by biology, but by every measure that matters, your family. That night, Lyss composed her response to the council. She sat at the desk and found herself unable to write the formal response expected of her. Instead, High Magistrate Velis, I acknowledge receipt of notification. I wish to inform the Council that I will not be providing the expected responses. I will not confirm that emotional attachments lead to dysfunction, because I have seen that they do not. I will not agree that Earth has taught me chaos, because I have learned instead about the strength of community. I will not return to Verith Prime for rehabilitation, because I am not broken. I respectfully request extension of my exile term and will pursue legal channels to ensure my right to remain on Earth. Mother, I hope someday you will understand that I did not fail here. I found what you sent me to lose. Your daughter, Lyss. She sent it before she could reconsider. The response came within hours. Brief, cold, devastatingly clear. You have chosen exile over family. You have chosen aliens over your own people. You are no longer my daughter. The council will retrieve its property. Do not attempt resistance. Lyss read it once. Her patterns dimmed to barely visible shadows. She sat in the dark and tried to feel the loss appropriately. When tears came, they weren't entirely from grief. They were from anger, from the understanding that her mother saw her as property, not as a person. There was a soft knock. Lyss, can I come in? Roland entered with 2 cups of tea. He sat beside her, offering 1 cup, saying nothing, just present. She disowned me, Lyss said finally. My mother, she said I am no longer her daughter. I'm sorry. It is the logical outcome of my choices. But her voice broke. I knew this would happen. It is procedure. It is expected. That doesn't make it hurt less. No, it does not. She looked at the tea. Roland, why do humans value family so highly when it causes such pain? Because the alternative is being alone, and being alone is worse. He set down his cup. When Diane died, the pain was unbearable, but I wouldn't trade those 15 years for anything. The joy, the love, it was worth it. That makes no sense. I know, but it's true anyway, he hesitated. Lyss, you're not losing a family, you're changing families. The one you were born into didn't value you for who you are, but there's one here that does. I meant what I said. I want to adopt you, make you part of this family officially. Not just because it's a legal strategy, because I want you here, because we want you here. Her patterns flickered between dimming grief and brightening hope. I do not understand you. This makes no logical sense. Welcome to humanity. We don't make sense. We just love each other and figure out the rest as we go. The next month passed in a blur of legal preparation and community mobilization. Fairhill worked on adoption paperwork, navigating the complex intersection of human family law and interspecies rights. Roland filed formal documents listing Lyss as an adult dependent requiring family support and protection. But Cascadia Station decided Lyss was one of them. Rita organized a petition. Within a week, every resident had signed it. The copper kettle had a jar by the register labeled Lyss's legal fund that filled quickly. Jace started a social media campaign. Hashtag Let Lyss Stay went viral, spreading with testimonials from townspeople, photos of Lyss at community events. Within days, it had millions of views. The media picked up the story. Alien exile finds family on Earth. Small town fights to keep adopted alien daughter. Lyss watched with confusion and wonder. I do not understand why strangers care. Because humans love an underdog story, Gemma explained. And the idea of someone being forced back to a place that wants to brainwash them makes people angry. But this affects them not at all. Doesn't matter, that's how empathy works. We care about people we've never met because we can imagine how they feel. That is extremely inefficient. Yeah. But it's also why you have thousands of people you've never met fighting for you right now. On the morning investigator Shale was scheduled to arrive, Cascadia Station turned out in force. The town hall meeting room was packed. Fairhill had secured it as neutral ground, with the agreement that the Vatarian Council would respect Earth's legal processes. Lyss sat at the front table with Roland on one side and Fairhill on the other. Gemma, Des, and what seemed like half the town filled the seats behind them. Investigator Shale arrived precisely on time, accompanied by 2 council aides. He was tall even by Vatarian standards, his patterns precisely maintained, his bearing radiating cold authority. He looked at the crowded room with visible distaste. "This is highly irregular," he said. "The severance protocol assessment is meant to be private. On Earth, matters involving family separation are matters of public interest," Fairhill said calmly. "Ms. Lyss has requested witnesses. That's her right under human law. She is not human, she is Vatarian, subject to Vatarian law. She's on Earth soil, Earth law applies." Fairhill gestured to a seat. "Shall we begin?" Shale sat with rigid precision. He pulled out a data tablet. "Lyss, formerly of the House of Vellies, I am here to assess your rehabilitation and determine if you have completed the lessons of your exile. I understand. You were exiled for dangerous thinking, specifically suggesting that emotional attachments serve evolutionary purposes. You were sent to Earth to observe the dysfunction that results from emotional decision-making. Have you observed such dysfunction?" Lyss felt the weight of the room's attention. Roland's presence beside her was steady, grounding. She thought of everything she'd learned in 7 months. The casseroles and soccer games, the birthday parties and pie, the way humans helped for no reason except that helping felt right. "No," she said. "I have not observed dysfunction. I have observed the opposite." Shale's patterns flickered. "Annoyance." "Explain." "Humans form emotional attachments readily and deeply. These attachments drive their behavior in ways that would be considered illogical on Varith Prime. They expend resources on individuals who provide no functional return. They make decisions based on feelings rather than mathematical optimization, all of which leads to chaos and weakness." "No, it leads to strength." Lyss leaned forward. "I have lived among humans for 7 months. I have been injured and cared for. I have been afraid and protected. I have been alone and included. Every act of care I received was illogical by Vatarian standards, and yet those acts sustained me. They made me healthier. My wellness indicators are higher now than they were on Varith Prime. Because you have been corrupted. Because I have been allowed to be what Veritarians actually are beneath the cultural suppression, social beings who thrive on connection." She glanced at Fairhill, who nodded. "Investigator Shale, I do not believe the severance protocol was meant to rehabilitate me. I believe it was meant to break me, but it did not break me. It freed me." The room was silent. Shale's patterns had gone rigid. "You admit, then, that you have failed the rehabilitation. You persist in believing that emotional attachments are beneficial." "I do not believe it. I have observed it. I have data. Human communities function well precisely because of their emotional bonds, not despite them. They care for each other. They support each other. They build networks of mutual aid that have no enforcement mechanism except the desire to help. And it works. It works in isolated communities. It does not scale. Human governments are chaotic, their societies riddled with conflict. And yet they persist, they thrive, they create art and science and kindness." Lyss's patterns brightened despite her nervousness. Shale, I questioned the severance protocol because I watched my mother sever emotional bonds with dozens of children over her career. I watched families torn apart in the name of order. I watched people become dimmer, sadder, emptier. And I wondered if we were wrong. If our insistence on logic over emotion was actually making us weaker. That thinking is precisely why you needed rehabilitation. That thinking is precisely why I am healthier now than I have ever been. Shale consulted his tablet. The council has reviewed your reports, your integration into human society, your adoption of their emotional patterns. You have formed attachments to multiple individuals. You participate in recreational activities. You have even experienced what humans call fun. He said the word like it was contaminated. These are all indicators of corruption, or indicators that Vaterian culture has suppressed natural social tendencies to the detriment of our people. Lyss felt Roland's hand find hers under the table, a gesture of support. She didn't pull away. I refuse to return to Vareth Prime for isolation therapy. I refuse to be corrected for learning that connection is strength. You do not have that choice. The severance protocol is clear. You return for completion of rehabilitation or you face permanent exile with all associated consequences. I accept permanent exile. The room erupted. Shale's patterns flickered with shock. Behind Lyss the crowd was cheering. Shale stood abruptly. You do not understand what you are saying. Permanent exile means complete severance from Vaterian society. No contact with family. No access to Vaterian resources or culture. You will be declared dead to your people. Is that what you want? Lyss stood as well, meeting his gaze. My mother has already disowned me. My people sent me here expecting me to fail. I have found more family in 7 months on Earth than I had in 22 years on Vareth Prime. So yes, investigator, that is exactly what I want. Then you are a fool. Perhaps, but I am a fool with a choice, and I choose to stay. Fairhill stood, papers in hand. For the record, Dr. Roland Pacheco has filed legal adoption paperwork declaring Lyss his daughter under Earth law. This establishes permanent family bonds that cannot be dissolved by Vaterian decree. Ms. Lyss is now legally part of a human family and protected under the Harmony Accord's provisions regarding family separation. Shale's patterns went rigid with fury. This is a mockery of the severance protocol. This is a woman exercising her right to choose her own family. Fairhill's voice was steel wrapped in diplomacy. The Harmony Accords are clear. Member worlds cannot forcibly separate families except in cases of criminal activity. Ms. Lyss has committed no crimes on Earth. Her adoption is legal and binding. You have no authority to remove her. The Council will contest this. They're welcome to try, but it will take years to resolve through proper channels. And in that time, Ms. Lyss will remain exactly where she is with her family in her home as a resident of Earth. Shale looked at Lyss with something that might have been pity or contempt. You have chosen to become less than you were. You were heir to one of the great houses. Now you are nothing. No, Roland stood, still holding Lyss's hand. She's my daughter, that's not nothing. I am part of a community, Lyss added. I am cared for and I care for others. I have purpose and belonging. By human measures, I am successful, and I am happier than I have ever been on Vareth Prime. Happiness is not success. On Earth it is. Shale gathered his things with sharp, angry movements. The Council will be informed of your choice. You understand that you can never return home, never see your family, never participate in Vaterian society. This is permanent. I understand. Lyss's patterns were bright now, brighter than Shale had probably ever seen on an exile. I also understand that I am already home. He left without another word, his aides following in silent precision. The door had barely closed before the room exploded into celebration. People were hugging, crying, cheering. Des was there, then Gemma, then what seemed like the entire town wanting to congratulate her, welcome her, tell her they were glad she was staying. Finally, Roland managed to extract her to the hallway. They stood in the relative quiet, both slightly shell-shocked. That was terrifying, Lyss said. I have just committed permanent exile. I will never see my father again. I will never return to Vareth Prime. I have severed every connection to my people. Do you regret it? She thought about her mother's cold rejection, about the crystal gardens she'd never walk through again, about the perfect order and controlled precision of life on Verith Prime. Then she thought about Rita's pie and Dez's jokes and playing soccer with teenagers. She thought about learning tides with Roland and being protected when she was afraid and included when she felt alone. She thought about Haven House and the ocean and the way humans said I love you like it was both simple and sacred. No, she said, I do not regret it. I am terrified and uncertain and my patterns indicate significant stress response, but I do not regret choosing to stay. Good. Roland pulled her into a hug. Because you're stuck with us now, official family, no take-backs. That is not how legal adoption works. It's exactly how it works in this family. That evening, Haven House was full of people. Gemma and Jace, Dez, Rita, Fairhill, and a dozen other townspeople who'd become Lyss's unlikely defenders. Someone had brought champagne. Someone else had made a cake that said "Welcome home, Lyss" in slightly uneven frosting. Lyss stood on the deck watching the sun set over the ocean, feeling the warm presence of community behind her. Through the windows, she could see humans laughing, talking, touching each other with casual affection. She could hear music, something cheerful and mathematically chaotic. She could smell food and coffee and the salt air of the coast. Roland joined her with 2 glasses of champagne. You okay? I am processing. Today I lost a family and gained another. It is significant change. Yeah, I bet. He handed her a glass. For what it's worth, I'm glad you stayed. The house was too quiet before you got here. It will be noisier now. I believe the town intends to visit regularly. That sounds about right, he smiled. Lyss, I want you to know this adoption isn't just a legal strategy. I meant what I said, your family, for real. Her patterns brightened, that response she couldn't control even if she wanted to. I am still learning what family means to humans. On my world, family is about bloodlines and social position. Here, it seems to be about choosing who you keep close. That's exactly what it is. We choose each other every day. Inside, someone called for a toast. They went back in, Lyss surrounded by people who'd fought for her right to choose. Fairhill raised his glass. To Lyss, he said, who came here as an exile and stayed as family. May Earth always be a place where people can choose their own paths. To Lyss, the room chorused. She looked around at all of them, these chaotic, emotional, illogical humans who'd taken her in for no reason except that she needed help. Who'd defended her because she'd become one of them. Who'd fought a galactic council because family was worth fighting for. Thank you, she said, and her voice only shook a little. I came to Earth expecting to learn about the weakness of emotional attachment. Instead, I learned about its strength. I expected chaos and found community. I expected dysfunction and found belonging. You have given me more than shelter. You have given me home. Damn right we have, Dez said. Now someone cut that cake before Rita starts crying. I am not emotional, you ridiculous man. I just have allergies. The evening dissolved into warm chaos. Lyss ate cake, still too sweet but somehow perfect, and answered questions and learned a card game that made no mathematical sense but was fun anyway. She stayed up too late and laughed too much and felt her patterns stay bright even as exhaustion set in. Later, when everyone had gone and the house was quiet, Lyss sat in what was now officially her room. She pulled up her communication interface and composed one final message to Verith Prime. Father, I know you cannot respond. I know that acknowledging this message would risk your position, but I wanted you to know that I have chosen permanent exile. I will not return for rehabilitation. I have found a family here, a community, a home. I know you will not understand this choice. Mother certainly does not. But I hope, perhaps, some part of you is proud that I stood by my convictions, that I questioned what needed questioning, that I chose truth over comfort. I will miss you, but I will not regret this. Your daughter always, even if the council says otherwise. Lyss. She sent it knowing he probably wouldn't respond, couldn't respond if he wanted to maintain his position. But she sent it anyway because humans had taught her that some things were worth doing even if they were impractical. 3 days later, she received a response. Brief, coded in a mathematical sequence only the two of them knew from her childhood. Pride is an emotion. Emotions are illogical, but if I were capable of pride, I would feel it now. Be well, daughter, be free. She cried, that human response to overwhelming emotion, and found Roland at her door within minutes. What's wrong? She showed him the message. He read it twice, then smiled. Your dad's a rebel. He is risking much to send this. That's what parents do. They risk things for their kids. He sat beside her. You going to be okay? Yes, I think so. It still hurts, but it is the kind of hurt that comes with choosing your own path. Humans would call it worth it. We would, and we'd be right. In the months that followed, Lyss settled into her new life. The adoption was finalized. Her legal status changed to permanent resident with family sponsorship. She got Earth identification documents that listed Roland Pacheco as her father and made her, legally and officially, Lyss Pacheco. She took Des up on his apprenticeship offer full-time. She had aptitude for mechanics, the mathematics of engines and systems, translating well from Vegetarian education. She continued playing soccer with Jace and his friends, never becoming good but becoming enthusiastic. She kept her part-time job at the Copper Kettle, learning that being present and listening made her better with people than she'd thought possible. By the one-year mark, Lyss had built a life that would have been unthinkable during her first terrified days on Earth. She had work, friends, family, routines, a place in the community. Her patterns stayed bright most days. The news from Verith Prime was sparse. 3 other young Veritarians had requested remediation exile to Earth, which apparently horrified the Council. The severance protocol was under review. High Magistrate Velis had publicly disowned her daughter and refused all questions about the matter. None of it touched Cascadia Station. The town went about its business, which now included an alien mechanics apprentice who made brilliant theoretical calculations and still couldn't figure out why humans found cat videos funny. On the evening of her one-year anniversary on Earth, Roland organized a small celebration, just family. Gemma and Jace, Des, Rita, Fairhill, who'd driven out for the occasion. They gathered at Haven House with food and cake and the comfortable chaos Lyss had learned to associate with human gatherings. 1 year, Fairhill said, raising his glass. Happy Earth-iversary, Lyss. That is not a real word. It is now. I'm a diplomat. I can make up words. He smiled. Seriously, though, you've done remarkably well. Most exiles struggle for years. You've thrived. I had help. Lyss looked around at her family, the one she'd chosen, the one that had chosen her back. Significant help. That's what family does, Roland said. Help each other, celebrate each other, make up words to mark important occasions. Later, after the guests had left and the house was quiet, Lyss found Roland on the deck watching the stars. She joined him, comfortable in the silence. They developed these quiet routines over the year, shared coffee in the morning, shared silence in the evening, the easy companionship of people who knew each other well. Thank you, she said finally. For what? For finding me on the beach, for not leaving me there, for making me family when I had none, for teaching me that emotional attachments are not weakness. You taught yourself that. I just provided the environment. You provided home. That is not insignificant. Roland was quiet for a moment. You know, when Diane died, I thought that was it for me. No more family, no more connection. I just work and exist and eventually fade away. Then Gemma forced me to keep living. And then you crashed into my research zone and gave me a reason to remember how to care about someone again. I gave you that. Yeah, you needed help, and helping you reminded me that connection is worth the risk. That family, however you find it or make it, is what makes life worth living. He smiled. So thank you too. Her patterns brightened in the darkness, casting faint light across the deck. This is very human, this mutual appreciation with no transaction. Gets you every time, doesn't it? Every time. They stood there watching the stars, the same stars visible from Verith Prime, though from a different angle. Somewhere out there, her birth mother looked at those stars and saw order, mathematics, the cold perfection of calculated orbits. Lyss looked at them and saw beauty that didn't need equations to be meaningful. She'd been sent to Earth as punishment. She'd been meant to learn that emotional attachments led to dysfunction, that humans were chaotic and weak, that Vegetarian logic was superior. Instead, she'd learned that strength came in many forms. That community could be chosen, not just inherited. That family was built through care and effort and mutual support, not just genetic proximity. That being logical didn't mean being cold. That feeling deeply wasn't weakness, it was courage. She'd been sent here to break. Instead, she'd been made whole. Roland, she said quietly. Yeah, I am glad I crashed near your research station. Me too, kiddo, me too. And standing there on the deck of Haven House, overlooking the Pacific Ocean with her chosen father beside her and the lights of Cascadia Station twinkling in the distance, Lyss Pacheco understood something her people had forgotten. That connection mattered more than perfection. That chosen family could be stronger than blood. That love, messy and illogical and inefficient as it was, remained worth every risk it carried. She had come to Earth expecting to confirm everything she'd been taught. Instead, she'd learned everything she needed to know. And that lesson, that beautiful, chaotic, perfectly imperfect lesson, had made all the difference.